My bestie's shark prank backfired spectacularly. Now I'm suing him, and our 13-year friendship hangs by a thread. I never thought I'd be telling this story, but here I am, still processing the events that unfolded during what was supposed to be a relaxing beach vacation. My name is Alex, and I'm 27 years old. For the past 13 years, I've been best friends with Marco, also 27. We met in high school and hit it off instantly, bonding over our shared love for video games, terrible jokes, and an insatiable appetite for adventure. Over the years, Marco and I had been through thick and thin together. We celebrated each other's victories, consoled one another during tough times, and even lived together for a while after college. Our friendship was the kind that people often envied, the type where you could go months without talking and pick up right where you left off as if no time had passed. It was Marco who suggested we take a trip to celebrate our upcoming birthdays. We were both turning 28 in a few months, and he thought it would be the perfect opportunity to get away from our increasingly hectic lives. I had just started a new job at a tech startup, and Marco was in the final year of his PhD program. The stress was piling up for both of us, and a vacation sounded like exactly what we needed. "Come on, Alex," Marco had said, his eyes gleaming with excitement. "When was the last time we did something crazy? Let's hit the beach, soak up some sun, and maybe even learn to surf." I couldn't resist his enthusiasm. All right, I laughed. "But I'm not getting on any surfboard. I'll leave the wipeouts to you." We spent weeks planning the perfect getaway. We chose a beautiful beach town known for its crystal clear waters, vibrant nightlife, and most importantly, its reputation as a haven for marine life enthusiasts. Marco had always been fascinated by sharks, and this place was famous for its hammerhead sightings. As our departure date approached, my excitement grew. I imagined lazy days on the beach, cool drinks in hand, and nights filled with laughter and good food. Little did I know that this trip would change everything. We arrived at our destination on a sunny Saturday afternoon. The salty sea breeze hit us as soon as we stepped out of the taxi, and I could feel the stress of the past few months melting away. Our hotel was a modest beachfront property, nothing fancy, but it had a charm that immediately made us feel at home. "This is perfect," I said, dropping my bags on one of the twin beds in our room. The window faced the ocean, offering a spectacular view of the sun-kissed waves. Marco grinned, already changed into his swim trunks. "What are we waiting for? Let's hit the beach." For the first few days, everything was perfect. We spent our mornings lounging on the beach, afternoons exploring the town, and evenings sampling the local cuisine. Marco even convinced me to try surfing, which ended exactly as I had predicted, with me face planting into the water more times than I care to admit. On the fourth day of our trip, Marco suggested we check out the pier. "I heard from some locals that you can sometimes see hammerheads from there," he explained, practically bouncing with excitement. I was hesitant. "Are you sure it's safe?" I asked, remembering the countless shark documentaries Marco had forced me to watch over the years. He rolled his eyes. "Don't be such a scaredy cat, Alex. We're not going in the water. Besides, sharks aren't the mindless killers people think they are. They're fascinating creatures." Reluctantly, I agreed. We made our way to the pier, stopping to grab some ice cream cones along the way. The wooden structure stretched out into the ocean, offering a panoramic view of the coastline. It was busy, filled with tourists and locals alike, some fishing, others simply enjoying the view. We found a spot near the end of the pier and leaned against the railing. The water below was incredibly clear, allowing us to see schools of colorful fish darting about. And then, just as Marco had hoped, we saw them, 3 hammerhead sharks, their distinctive silhouettes unmistakable as they glided through the water. "This is amazing," Marco exclaimed, fumbling for his phone to take pictures. "I can't believe we're actually seeing them in the wild." I had to admit, it was an impressive sight. The sharks moved with a grace that belied their fearsome reputation, seemingly unbothered by the humans gawking at them from above. We spent the next hour watching the sharks and taking photos. Marco was in his element, rattling off facts about hammerheads that I only half listened to. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the water, I suggested we head back. "Just a few more minutes," Marco pleaded. "I want to get some pictures in this light." I sighed but agreed. That's when things took a turn I never could have anticipated. We moved to a less crowded section of the pier for better photos. I was leaning against the railing, looking down at the water, when I felt a sudden, forceful shove from behind. Before I could react, I was falling, the world spinning around me. The shock of hitting the water was like a punch to the gut. I surfaced, gasping and spluttering, my mind racing to understand what had just happened. That's when I heard it, laughter. I looked up to see Marco, doubled over with mirth, his phone pointed directly at me. "Marco," I yelled, panic rising in my chest as I treaded water. "What the hell are you doing? Get me out of here." But he just kept laughing and filming. It was then that I remembered, the sharks. Terror gripped me as I imagined those powerful jaws closing around my legs. I started screaming in earnest, thrashing in the water, trying desperately to swim back to the pier. "Help," I shouted, my voice cracking with fear. "Somebody help me." I heard shouts from above as other people on the pier realized what was happening. A lifeguard's whistle pierced the air, and I saw someone diving into the water. Moments later, strong arms gripped me, pulling me towards safety. As soon as my feet touched the sand, my legs gave out. I collapsed onto the beach, coughing and shaking. People crowded around me, asking if I was okay, offering towels and water. But all I could focus on was Marco, who was making his way down from the pier, that stupid grin still on his face. "Dude, that was hilarious," he said as he approached. "You should have seen your face." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Hilarious? I had just been through the most terrifying experience of my life, and he thought it was funny? Without a word, I got to my feet and stormed off, ignoring Marco's calls behind me. I made my way back to our hotel room, my mind a whirlwind of emotions, fear, anger, betrayal. How could he do this to me? We were supposed to be best friends. I took a long, hot shower, trying to wash away the salt and the memory of those terrifying moments in the water. By the time I got out, Marco was back in the room. "Come on, Alex," he said, his tone cajoling. "It was just a joke. No harm done, right?" I couldn't even look at him. "I'm going home," I said flatly, pulling out my suitcase and starting to pack. Marco's eyes widened. "What? Don't be ridiculous. We still have 3 days left." "I don't care," I snapped. "I can't be around you right now. You put my life in danger for a stupid prank, Marco. Do you even realize how serious this is?" He scoffed. "You're overreacting. Those sharks were harmless. They wouldn't have done anything to you." But I wasn't listening anymore. I finished packing in silence, Marco's protests falling on deaf ears. As I headed for the door, he tried one last time. "At least let me show you the video," he said, holding up his phone. "It's actually pretty funny when you watch it back." I slammed the door behind me. The next few days were a blur. I changed my flight and spent the remaining time at a different hotel, trying to process what had happened. I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. How could someone I trusted so completely do something so thoughtless and dangerous? When I got home, I was still angry. The more I thought about it, the more I realized I couldn't just let this go. Marco had not only put my life at risk but it also humiliated me and showed a complete lack of remorse. That's when I decided to take legal action. I reached out to a lawyer, explaining the situation. She listened carefully, her expression growing more serious as I recounted the events. "Do you have any evidence of what happened?" she asked when I finished. I nodded. "He sent me the video he took. I haven't been able to watch it yet." She nodded sympathetically. "That video could be crucial evidence if you decide to pursue this legally. Are you sure you want to go down this road? It could mean the end of your friendship." I took a deep breath. I think the friendship ended the moment he pushed me into that water. And so, we proceeded. My lawyer drafted the necessary documents, and Marco was served with papers a few days later. I braced myself for his reaction, knowing it wouldn't be pretty. Sure enough, my phone exploded with notifications that evening. Multiple missed calls, angry text messages, and even a few voicemails. I listened to one, wincing at the fury in Marco's voice. "Are you out of your mind?" he yelled. "A lawsuit? Over a harmless prank? What the hell is wrong with you, Alex? 13 years of friendship, and this is how you repay me? You're overreacting, man. Call me back and explain yourself." I didn't call him back. Instead, I sent a short text, "My lawyer will be in touch. Please don't contact me again." The days that followed were difficult. Mutual friends started reaching out, confused and concerned about what was happening between us. I found myself having to explain the situation over and over, reliving the terror of those moments in the water each time. Some friends were supportive, horrified by Marco's actions. Others thought I was overreacting, that a lawsuit was too extreme for what they saw as a prank gone wrong. I started to question myself. Was I doing the right thing? Was I throwing away years of friendship over one terrible mistake? But then I would remember the feeling of helplessness as I flailed in the water, the panic that gripped me as I imagined sharp teeth closing in. I would recall Marco's laughter, His complete disregard for my fear and safety. And I knew I had to see this through. The legal process was slow and draining. Depositions were taken, evidence was gathered, and negotiations attempted. Marco's lawyer reached out several times, trying to settle out of court. But I wasn't interested in money. I wanted Marco to understand the gravity of what he had done, to take responsibility for his actions. As the court date approached, I found myself reflecting on our friendship. Had there been signs I'd missed? Looking back, I could recall other pranks that had made me uncomfortable, nothing as extreme as this, but moments where Marco had pushed boundaries for the sake of a laugh. There was the time in college when he'd hidden my laptop the day before a big presentation, watching me panic for hours before revealing where it was. Or the incident at his brother's wedding, where he'd convinced me to give an impromptu speech, only to reveal later that the request from the bride had been his idea of a joke. I'd always brushed these off, telling myself that's just how Marco was. He liked to push buttons, to get a reaction. But now, with the perspective of distance and time, I could see a pattern of behavior that I'd been too close to recognize before. The day of the court hearing arrived. I felt a mix of nervousness and determination as I put on my suit and headed to the courthouse. My lawyer met me outside, giving me a reassuring nod as we walked in together. The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined, nothing like the grand chambers you see in movies. Marco was already there with his lawyer, and our eyes met briefly as I took my seat. He looked tired, the usual spark of mischief in his eyes replaced by something darker, anger, perhaps, or fear. The judge entered, and the proceedings began. Our lawyers presented their arguments, painting very different pictures of what had happened that day on the pier. Marco's lawyer portrayed it as a harmless prank between friends, a moment of poor judgment but nothing malicious. My lawyer emphasized the danger I had been placed in, the trauma I had experienced, and Marco's lack of remorse in the aftermath. When it was time for me to testify, I took a deep breath and recounted the events as clearly as I could. I described the terror I felt in the water, the betrayal I experienced seeing Marco laugh at my distress, and the lasting impact the incident had had on my life. "Mr. Henderson," the judge said, looking at me over her glasses, "you and the defendant were friends for many years. Why do you believe this incident warrants legal action rather than a personal resolution?" I paused, considering my words carefully. "Your Honor, friendship is built on trust and mutual respect. What Marco did that day showed a complete disregard for my safety and well-being. It wasn't just a momentary lapse in judgment, it was a betrayal of the trust I had placed in him. And his actions afterward, his refusal to acknowledge the seriousness of what he'd done, made me realize that this wasn't something that could be resolved with a simple apology." The judge nodded, then turned to Marco. "Mr. Rossi, do you have anything to add?" Marco stood, his face a mask of conflicting emotions. I never meant for things to go this far," he said, his voice uncharacteristically subdued. "It was supposed to be a joke. I didn't think about the consequences. I'm sorry, Alex. I'm really sorry." It was the first time since the incident that I'd heard genuine remorse in his voice. Part of me wanted to accept his apology, to try and salvage what we had. But another part, the part that still woke up in cold sweats remembering the feel of the water closing over my head, knew that some things couldn't be undone. The judge considered for a moment before delivering her verdict. She found in my favor, ordering Marco to pay damages and complete community service hours related to water safety education. She also mandated that he attend counseling sessions to address his behavior. As we left the courtroom, Marco approached me. "Alex, can we talk?" he asked, his voice low. I hesitated, then nodded. We stepped into an empty corridor, away from the bustle of the courthouse. "I really am sorry," Marco said, running a hand through his hair. "I never meant to hurt you. I don't know, I got carried away. I thought it would be funny, and I didn't think about how dangerous it was. I was an idiot." I looked at him, this person who had been such a huge part of my life for so long. "I know you're sorry, Marco. But sorry doesn't undo what happened. It doesn't take away the nightmares or the panic attacks I get when I'm near water now." He winced. "I had no idea it affected you that much. God, I've been such an asshole. Is there any way we can fix this? Any way I can make it up to you?" I sighed, feeling the weight of 13 years of friendship pressing down on me. "I don't know, Marco. Right now, I need space. I need time to process everything that's happened. Maybe someday we can talk about rebuilding our friendship, but for now, I think it's best if we go our separate ways." Marco nodded, his shoulders slumping. "I understand. For what it's worth, I really am sorry, Alex. I hope someday you can forgive me." As I watched him walk away, I felt a mix of sadness and relief. The Marco I knew, the friend I had trusted with my life, was gone. But in his place was the possibility of growth, of learning from mistakes and becoming better. I left the courthouse that day feeling lighter, as if a burden had been lifted. The road ahead wouldn't be easy, I still had a lot of healing to do, both emotionally and psychologically. But I knew I had made the right decision in standing up for myself, in showing that actions have consequences, even between friends. As I stepped out into the sunlight, I took a deep breath. For the first time since that day on the pier, I felt like I could finally start moving forward. The memory of those terrifying moments in the water would always be with me, but they no longer had the power to control my life. I thought about the judge's decision, about Marco's community service and counseling. Maybe some good could come out of this situation after all. In the weeks that followed, I focused on my own healing. I started seeing a therapist to work through my newfound fear of water and the lingering trust issues from Marco's betrayal. It was a slow process, but I gradually began to feel more like myself again. One day, about 6 months after the court hearing, I received an unexpected email from Marco. He wrote about his experiences during his community service, working with a local water safety organization. He described how he'd come to fully understand the gravity of his actions and the potential consequences they could have had. Marco also mentioned that his counseling sessions had helped him recognize a pattern of reckless behavior in his life, which he was now actively working to change. The email ended with another apology and a tentative request to meet for coffee, if I felt ready. I sat with that email for a long time, considering my response. Part of me was still hurt, still angry. But another part recognized the effort Marco was making to change and take responsibility for his actions. After a few days of reflection, I decided to reply. I agreed to meet him, not with the expectation of rekindling our friendship, but with the hope of finding some closure. When we met, the conversation was awkward at first, but gradually became more open. Marco shared more about his journey over the past months, and I talked about my own process of healing. We both acknowledged that our friendship could never be what it once was, but we also recognized the growth we'd both experienced as a result of that fateful day on the pier. As we parted ways, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The incident had changed both of our lives irrevocably, but it had also led to important self-reflection and personal growth for each of us. Looking back now, I realize that sometimes the most painful experiences can lead to the most significant transformations. While Marco and I will never be as close as we once were, I'm grateful for the lessons I learned about standing up for myself, the importance of true friendship, and the power of taking responsibility for one's actions. The beach vacation that went so terribly wrong ended up being a turning point in my life. It taught me about my own resilience, the complexity of long-term friendships, and the importance of surrounding myself with people who truly have my best interests at heart. As I continue to move forward, I carry these lessons with me, a reminder that even the darkest moments can lead to personal growth and a brighter future.